Welcome back to Railroads Online playthroughs, and this is episode 5. And we are back again up here at the logging camp, and we have gotten the 12 log cars of logs loaded so we can refill the pond. And Cookie Moguls and the Cookie Monster is waiting over here, ready to head down, and we'll probably need to put a little bit of fire in him. That'll get him going. We need to flip this switch. We won't walk through the doors, we'll open them, and we'll open the windows too. We should have enough steam built up there to get moving. Pull out the slack. Yes, can't wait till I get that load of firewood down a little bit lower so that I can actually see over the tender. When I go for refills, I normally don't fill it past the wooden side bulkhead so that you can actually see what's behind you. Alright. Let's give it some beans. Get going. We're going to live life dangerous today. We're not going to brake, and we're not going to back off the regulator all the way down the hill, and let's see if we derail. So that's 12 loaded down to 1.5 at full throttle. We'll need to keep a pretty good watch out from behind us to see whether or not they come off. Things will start to bounce and give us a bit of an indication before they're going to go. But just looking at how fast we're moving, I don't think we're going to hit the speed cap. We'll be able to run all the way there and not have any problems. There's no tight corners. I think what was it, the tightest corner that got put on here was 15 degrees, and that's this corner we're going around now is 15. So it's a pretty open route. And more than likely we're down on pressure as well. I don't know, it's still up there nice and high. Oh, I reckon we're already up to steam. It's quite good having a decent locomotive instead of poor little Betsy that can barely pull anything or stop. And I've played the whole game through to the end with just this one locomotive and not needed even a second one. But yeah, I haven't done any silly long trains. 20 rail cars is the longest I've ever put together into a single consistent runner. I haven't seen any need to go any bigger than that. And the only one that I'd consider going bigger would be a trip to the coal mine, and I would put 23 in the consist so that there's 3 rail cars of rails and 20 of beams so that you've got an even number for the input. That would be the only time that I'd even consider going that big. Or perhaps cordwood to the smelter. Because, oh boy, that smelter can chew through the cordwood like it's going out of style. I can't wait till we have alternative means to, like, you know, delivery of coal to the smelter. Might back it off here. Drag on the brakes. Will we stop in time? They are good brakes, but it's pretty heavy, and no, it's going to keep going. Full rigging back. Back it up. We well and truly overshot that. Overestimated how heavy these logs really are. And yes, we are on the realistic physics so that the weights of the logs are their full amount. And that should be far enough. We'll just do a stop and unload today. And we better check our money to make sure our money's going up, and it is. Put this back in forward. And just get it moving to start off with. And just let it roll gently. We better go down this other end here and flip this switch, because if we run through the backside of the switch, that'll be a derailment where we didn't really need to have a derailment. And this is not the ES&D. And yes, I'll just let it roll on through for the rest of the rail cars. Should be able to unload them all in time as they roll past. Yep, all unloading. And this should give us enough beams then filled back up so that we can take beams and lumber up to the iron mine when the iron mine line's built in. One more to go. Yes, good idea that we flip that switch first, because the front of the train has just passed over that switch. Right, let's jump up on here. We'll just hit the last brake. That'll stop it. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of building here, because yeah, down here at the sawmill we need to have a service depot where we can get some water and some firewood, and also a sand house. Not that the game really needs a sand house yet. And I reckon here, on this little section of straight here, is probably the best place to put it. You could put it round on this other side, in front of the cranes, but I find it gets in the way when you're trying to see where basically to sight the rail cars into the cranes. So we'll put it here. First thing we'll do is we'll options and graphics, and we'll get rid of our grass so we can see where we're building. And now we need to delete some of the stuff we've put in here so we can see where things are going to be placed down at. So the first thing we want is a water tower. We'll place the water tower. We know where it lines up. It lines up at the edge of the tyres. I almost had it, and then I moved the mouse a little bit to the right. This can be so tricky to get to line up that. It's got to be pretty close. Actually, I think I'm a little bit too close. So let's put it down and see. And I'm a little bit too close. Try again. Oh, that's so jumpy with the mouse. Moves a little bit, moves a mile. Let's give that a try. That looks a little bit better. Pull it down now and I'll have a look. And you do need to remove your groundworks when you put these in. Oh, that's nice. Right centre of the track. Put it back up again. And now the sand house works a little bit differently. When you want to put the sand house in, let's grab it. It's also got a kickboard, but its kickboard needs to line up under this rail right at that point where it is there at the moment. But the problem is, because the rail's there, it's actually making the sand house basically lift up in the air. So before we can put it in, we actually have to get rid of a piece of the rail out of the middle. And then it'll let us put it down on the deck. And see, as soon as we get too close, it'll lift up. So we need to put it in. It's better to get just slightly over the top of it so we can get a good line up to make sure it lines up underneath the rail. Well, let's try that on for size. And I think we're a little bit skewed there. Sticking out a little bit too far at this end. Oh no, seems to be lined up pretty good. And now we can put our piece of track back in again. And you can generally see which way the track was built. Well, we can see that the track was actually built this direction, so we'll put the track back in the same direction it was built. And that's got to do with how far over the end of the tyres the rail appears. And now we'll compare it to over the whole piece of the rail that's put back. So now that should work to line up the sand spout, and it should have dropped all the way into the ground and we shouldn't be floating. Yes, it's all the way down. And they've got a little ladder on here, and for some of the locomotives that you can't actually reach, you can get up on top and you can drop the sander down like that. I'm standing up here on this little platform. Just if you operate it from the backside, left is right and right is left, but up and down is still up and down. And we'll also put a firewood depot here on this side. And what we'll actually do for it, because it's easiest to line up, and we're going to put the actual firewood side. And so we'll just build over the top of here with some of this bridge decking, and that gives us somewhere to line the legs up to, because we're going to put it in this way instead of putting it in backwards. And is it even going to let us place it? It's not even going to let us get close to placing it. It's just going to straight up say no. Oh, there we go. There's the spot where it's going to let us put it in. And we want the legs just off of touching the edge of the... Oh, let's jump up in the air. So that's the spot where it wants to put it. And that's touching. We want to be back off of touching just a little bit. Let's try that. And I reckon that's lined up pretty straight. That way when we stop here, we stop through when we're facing this direction. We can stop here, and the sander dome's underneath the sander. And you'll only have to pull forward just a little bit then to put the water in from the water. And while the water's filling, you can either be stacking from this side, stand in the tender and stack from this side into the tender, or if it's facing this way, you can stand from this side in the tender and stack from these two back into the tender. Or you can stand out here and just throw it. And now we'll get rid of these couple of decks we put over the top. And we have to put in our groundworks back in. And we will overlap them one segment. Where's the joint? There's the joint. And we've got just off the center a little bit, so we will right click and we'll select it again. That's better. It's closer to being center. And connect to that. And there. And there. These should all be 7, so we'll go in nice and... Well, that one's not 7. It's a little bit short. And yes, you can see there we've got a little bit of a lip. This is Z randomization. So we'll lift it up a quarter for that one and then down again for this one so it meets back in again and we can't see the difference. And there we go. A neat alignment back in where you can't see where we edited it. Okay, and the last check for this here is we need to reverse the train back through it. And we've got the last brake on here. We'll turn him off. Reverse the train back through it and make sure that the train does not hit the sander house, because the sander house is very close to the edge of the track. And if it hits, we've got to do it all again. So we want to be in reverse, give it all the beans because we're pushing. Back it off and let it roll. And we'll go out to third person view for this so we can see it going through. Make sure nothing's going to collide. And that all looks pretty good to me. Everything's all nice and neatly lined up. Gently on the brakes. I said gently on the brakes because we're around a corner, we don't want to slam it on. Get that shift key held down so that you can get incremental control of the brake. And now we can pull it on. Back to forwards, and we will pull forward to the water tower and we'll put some more water in this tender because about half of what we put in the tender when we bought the engine will have pumped into the boiler by now, and we need to top up the tender to make sure the tender's full. So we'll move it up here. Whoa! See, I got caught on the pole of the... You got your foot too far stuck out the side of the train, you can get caught on that ladder. We'll use third person view, it's easier to see when we're lined up, and that's about it. Brakes on. That'll work. So I'd imagine it'd be about half, because it would have had to have pumped in at least 3,500 into the boiler. So we'll stand here and we'll go to our third person view. Oh, it's not going to work while we're standing on the... Oh, there we go. And yes, we can see that the water table's only about just under 2/3. So we'll let that fill up. And we're going to head down here because we're going to start building our next little pieces of track in. Because all the jobs to here are done. We could probably do another load to the of logs here. How many beams did we get actually? We'll go around and have a look and see how many beams, because we're on hard economy, so we only get 2 beams for every log at the moment because the lumber side's full, so we get a double output on the beams. How far are we off having 100? We've got 84. So no, we can work with that for the moment. We don't need to do another trip for logs. Because yeah, with the little bug that's there in the output, so for it not checking to make sure if it's room, it's actually best to have one of your inputs be the controlling factor over how much the industry produces, instead of it being the full capacities, which stops production. So we'll run down here to the end of the line. And I should have a little piece if I do. And let's run out this first piece is going to need to be pretty much straight. And it's also going to need to be slightly off to the side, because the first thing we're going to put in here is a switch with the stand on the right that turns to the right. And we don't want the trees in here. And this turnout will be what leads off and goes to the iron mine for the iron mine supply route. And from this side of the switch on here, this will lead to the smelter. And we'll put another cross track on the end of there and another cross track on the end of here. Okay, we want to have a short little piece of straight on there. And now we need to put in a transition with a variable. And the first segment we want to go up 0.25, and we want to turn slightly, and another 0.25, turn a little bit more, and up again, turn a little bit more, and up again, and up again. And then the last segment we put in is 1.5, and that should give us a nice little corner and a transition to head towards the side of the mountain. And now we'll put in a constant so that we don't get any, we want 1.5 because we don't want any Z randomization in it. Will it let me put it down? Yes, it will. Get rid of a few more trees out of it. Can we get some launched ones? Woohoo, there he goes. Yes, I hope they never ever change this physics for the trees or how they decide they're going to launch themselves away. Because this was always fun to watch. And we'll get rid of this one here as well, and this one. Okay, let's start putting our track in here, because we can build the transition to start off with. And we want to go 5 for our first piece. And I estimate a 15 we'll need to get round this corner. I hope it's a 15 anyway. We might need to go tighter. I think we might need to go to an 18. And that's as tight as I want to go here. Oh, we might fall off the edge. Will we get it? Oh, let me have a look at that. There's the 7 tie, there it is. Now we want to back out of the corner slightly and we'll come to a 12. And then to a 5. And then to a straight. Now, the longer we can make this track, the more chance we've got of actually reaching the iron mine with that 1.5. So we want to try and keep it hugged as close as we can to the edge of the mountain. If we start to put in any big bridges or anything like that, we're going to run into the problem of not staying we'll lose distance in track, which means we'll lose length of track. Yeah, well, that didn't make sense, did it? Let's try again. Because we lose distance in track, we'll have to increase the grade, because we need to basically cover a certain amount of distance vertically as we do horizontally. And well, the trick from here now is to pretty much we'll grab a constant grade and we'll put it on the 1.5 and we just put in a string line. Same as we did when we were building down from the... And we need to try and keep the segments somewhat the same length. Because if we alter the length too much, we'll get funny kinks in the groundworks, and we'll have to do little edits over them. We don't want any tight corners. And yes, you sort of work your way along, going from the, like that's the bit that sticks out. Work your way along to the bits that stick out, so we can't really go to there. So we'll put two little short ones in there, which will put a little bit of a wobble in the track. And this is it's similar to what Heist did when he built his line for the Georgetown loop. But because he varied his lengths so much, and no, we're not actually going to get around this corner if I do that, so we're going to have to come out and make it just a little bit deep, otherwise I'll have too tight of a corner in there. He didn't judge his distances very well and caused some, he tried to stay too close in spots where he shouldn't have stayed too close. Like you can see, this is kind of a very smooth edge of a hill here. So we can stay pretty close. We don't have to go across gaps, and like you can see here, we need to make a little bit of because there's a part that sticks out in the side of the hill, so we sort of have to put our pointer on the part that sticks out the side of the hill. We can't come into here, we need to stay a little bit wide. And we probably could have come in just a little bit more than that. And you can already see what I mean about falling off the sides of cliffs, because we're already falling down all the time. And that's another one of them points where you had to go to an outcropping, and I think we need to actually come across and go to this outcropping for the next click. And that'll be a little tiny bridge that fits in there. And again, we're going to need to do the same here. This is going to be a very tricky piece to put in, because it won't want to go where I want it to go. So I'll try and get it from down the bottom. So I need to put a corner in here. And I think this is as far as we need to go on this one here, because we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to adjust angles and levels and build back over the top of it. So we'll pull out our next pot. And you can see if we put it over here, we won't be able to get round this abutment, this little bluff here. So we're going to have to put it there, and then we can come and say, rightio, we'll come around this bluff. And like this is only a first run, we'll come back through and we'll refine it later so that we can get a better idea of where we should be going. And again, we're going to run in, we're going to have to go up the inside of here. And that's the alarm saying that time's up. And through the middle of here. And we'll just do a grade check to make sure that we haven't lost our grade. You lift it up and put it down again, and it just ensures that you are actually building where you think you're building. Turn off that alarm. Silly touch screens never want to actually respond when you touch them. Now this is going to be a rather tight corner here, and guaranteed we needed to swing it a little bit wider than that. And here we go, we're heading in towards the top of the really big cliffs. And this is the most horriblest place to build on the map, I would say, is building along here. The amount of times I have fallen down trying to build along here is crazy. And because we're on top, we get away with it a little bit. And I think that's as far as we're going to be able to build. And from here on, I'm going to have to put basically a run of gravel around there, so that if we fall down, we can get back up again. So we'll run back along here and clear off the trees, and then we'll be able to get an idea of how too tight we got in certain spots, and we'll do a second pass up it with the stone wall again and try and correct some of those too tight spots, so that we can get a decent string line and have a spot where we can put down a guide track. Exactly the same method of building as what we did when we put the line down from the logging camp onto the plains. Because yes, this piece of stone wall we've put in here has got Z randomization in it. And we don't want bumpy grades, because bumpy grades are a problem. And you don't want them at any time. Z randomization on the flat is not a overly big issue, but Z randomization on your grade can be the difference between your train making it and your train not making it. We haven't had any real entertaining ones. Where's the entertaining tree launches? Well, that one was pretty good. Usually you get at least one or two that'll go to the moon, and they're just popping up and falling over. This one here will be a pretty little bridge that we build across here, because there's just not much else you can put in here. But yes, most of the way, oh, you launched pretty good. Most of the way that we build along here will be close on the hillside to being as level to the terrain as possible. But yes, on the other side of the cliff, it's a long drop. And because we've got to go from basically bluff to bluff over there, there needs to be bridges and whatnot put in the... Oh, he didn't even launch these buried ones. I'm not even getting launches from them. Oh, this is not very satisfying, is it? Launch tree! Occasionally you get them just at that spot where they won't cut. No one cut down eventually. And if they won't cut, you just sort of hold your left mouse button down and put the saw up and down the trunk, and you'll find a spot where it'll accept that you've cut them. And again, it doesn't matter if we cut down too many trees, because we will, after we've finished putting the line in, then we'll run the replant tool with the rows editor. That's pretty much the only thing that I use the rows editor for, is renaming rail cars when you forget, and putting the trees back in again. I'm not going to use it to cheat and fill rail cars Even when it comes to the tools, I know some people do that, and no, I don't agree with that. That's just straight up cheating the game. There's no point playing if you're going to do that. I will agree that they need to fix something up with the loading, and whether they speed it up or change the mechanic. But yes, just straight up cheating it by saying, righty, I'll pull up there and then I'll use an editing tool to fill my train, and then use the editing tool to take the same amount that you put on the train out of the industry. That's, yeah. If you're pressed for time, if you're out there and you've got a real job and you only get an hour or two to play the game in the evenings, I can understand why you would do that. But if you've got time to actually sit down and play the game, there's no reason that you should be doing that basically to cheat the game mechanic. Anyway, we'll call this episode here. I might attempt to get a live stream set up, and I will build the rest of this line on live stream so people can ask me questions while I'm building. I'll have to see how that goes, because good old Outback Internet doesn't work very well, and we'll have to see how a stream fares, whether or not I've got the bandwidth on the upload to be able to get a stream to work. Alright, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next episode.